Now to the fast food sticker shock in California after the minimum wage for workers out west was raised. Our chief business correspondent Rebecca Jarvis is here with the details. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning to you, Lindsay. Yeah, I am hearing from customers every day who say they are already feeling that sticker shock. Restaurants have been warning about this since September when California voted to increase large fast food chains' minimum wage by 25% from $16 to $20 an hour. In that time, restaurants in the state have increased prices by 10% faster than all other states, according to Data Essential. The wage increase is meant to give more financial security to the more than 500,000 people who work in fast food restaurants in California and are not teenagers but adults working to support their families. The California Restaurant Association says the price hikes were entirely predictable results of the minimum wage increase. Since it took effect, job losses, reduced working hours, restaurant closures, and higher prices for California's inflation-weary customers have been ongoing, the group said. And guys, this is something all the consumers who are facing it now are now facing a choice of whether or not to trade down. Many of them, I hear, are doing just that, spending less because they have to spend more. Gio?
Absolutely. All right, Rebecca, thank you so much.
All right, guys. So I feel like I've been talking about a lot of economics today, and lo and behold, we have another economics video, which, I mean, hey, I guess this is just the topic for today, but you guys are going to love this one, okay? Because we have another progressive economic backfire, right? I mean, it's just amazing to me how these people have to experience the consequences of the policies they support to realize that the policies they support are bad. And one of the backfires that we have to talk about today is the increase in minimum wage for delivery drivers out in Seattle. Now, we've talked a lot about the effect of increasing the minimum wage for fast food workers out in California. As you guys can see, that is a disaster, okay? The price of food, fast food, is rising exponentially in that state, which, you know, hey, could be a good thing because demand is dropping, right? Less people are buying fast food. They're having to make the trade-off between getting fast food for a higher price or just cooking at home and saving money. And hopefully more people opt to cook at home, and maybe we can do something about the obesity crisis in this country, okay? But, you know, what is happening in California is a lot of job losses, prices are increasing, businesses are shutting down as a result of the massive increase in minimum wage, which was extremely predictable for those of us who took Econ 101, right? Not in college, but in high school, okay? I mean, I'm just saying. So like I stated, we have to talk about another minimum wage backfire here involving delivery drivers out in Seattle. And this is an absolute disaster because there was a city council ordinance that was passed in 2022 called the Pay Up Ordinance, okay? And this legislative package was an extremely complicated way of bringing the minimum wage for delivery drivers to about $26 an hour, okay? Now, I'm not going to go over how they calculate it. It's extremely complicated. But just understand that the result was viral news stories like, for example, $26 coffees, $32 sandwiches, and $35 Wingstop orders, in which taxes and new fees comprised nearly 30% of the total. And again, this happened because companies responded the way companies do when you have a massive increase in labor costs, which is to add fees to make up for the increase in cost. And again, the results were predictable because you have people who took to the internet to complain about the massive and ridiculous price of delivery in Seattle.
I don't know what is going on. Seattle passed a new law recently that is supposed to help delivery drivers by giving them a certain amount of money per miles driven. It's supposed to help them because people don't tip and they're not making a lot of money when this is like their full-time gig. And I don't think it's working. I've only seen one other person and they didn't have their stitches on, but I'll tag them, talking about how they're a driver and this is actually making them lose money. But let me show you what it is doing to the consumer, because we already know that these restaurants and even good booming restaurants with lines out the door in Seattle are closing because of rent, because of costs, etc. And as a foodie in Seattle and a lover of these small businesses and family-owned restaurants, I don't want to keep seeing them close because of their business. And I don't know how we can fix this if we have to call a representative, but let me show you what it is doing to the consumer side for food delivery. Okay, this is the Chinese place down the block from me. If I want to get food delivered, 4 items, a total of $56.16 with no delivery fees, they are tacking on $21.44 in fees. So my $56 order for my family of 3, whatever, is now $77.60. That is ridiculous. And what I've heard, it is not helping the drivers. They are not getting this extra money. It is hindering the consumer because who the fuck is going to pay that? I am a lazy bitch. And now when I want food, I am walking and picking it up because this is ridiculous. And it makes me sad because there are so many restaurants that I want to eat at that are around Seattle that aren't that far, but I don't want to go. I want to get that shit delivered. But I'm not paying this much money for 4 fucking items of American Chinese food, okay?
Yeah, so we actually have some numbers behind the losses that are occurring for the businesses, for the drivers, and for the app delivery companies, okay? I mean, this is a net negative across the board, and I'm going to go into some of those numbers because they're staggering. But first, I want to play a news clip so you guys get a better understanding of what's going on here. But just understand that before all of this, the drivers were already getting paid about $20 an hour before the government stepped in and messed it up, right? Because the government, when they step in, they tend to not make things better. They tend to make it worse. And this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So now Seattle, they're panicking. The city council committee, they're trying to now revise this controversial minimum wage increase in order to get it back down to basically where it was when you were relying on the free market, which was $20 an hour. So without further ado, let's get to it.
Pay requirements for app-based delivery drivers in Seattle could soon change. A city council committee is now looking to revise the controversial gig worker ordinance. They hope the changes will better support local businesses and drivers. KOMO's Jackie Kent is live tonight with the details and has reaction from impacted drivers. Jackie.
There was more than an hour and a half of heated public comment on this topic at that committee meeting. Some drivers are pushing back against any changes. They say the problem isn't with the city law, it's how the app companies respond to it. Cut fees, not wages. Seattle app-based drivers shared the message in front of a council committee as it considers revisions to the city's gig worker ordinance that's meant to ensure minimum wage paid by companies like DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Instacart.
Please reform this legislation. Don't wait.
I don't want to be the council that rolls back labor standards. Everyone is watching.
The proposed changes come as restaurants and app companies report major revenue losses due to fewer orders since the law took effect in January. That's also resulted in lost wages for drivers who spoke at council.
What would you do if your financial resources were cut in half overnight?
The revisions would drop the pay requirement for app-based workers to just under $20 an hour plus 35 cents per mile and tips.
The gross hourly rate is equal to the city's current minimum wage.
Others argue the problem lies not with the existing law, but with companies like DoorDash adding a $5 fee on every Seattle customer's order, the company says to make up for operating costs. Now DoorDash tells KOMO it would consider reducing that fee if this legislation passes. Council President Sarah Nelson said she feels a moral obligation to move forward with revisions quickly as businesses and drivers struggle.
Okay, yeah. So I want you guys to understand the greed of some of these workers. And yes, I'm saying that they're being greedy, okay? Because you're a delivery driver and you're not supposed to be trying to live off of the wages of being a delivery driver. It's just as silly as the fast food workers in California. It's just as silly as the Uber drivers slash Lyft drivers in Minneapolis. I did a video about that too, in which they're trying to implement a minimum wage for what are supposed to be contract workers, right? These people are not supposed to be receiving W-2s, okay? They're contract workers, okay? No, Democrats have said, no, we want to pay these people a minimum wage, okay? And that's just not how the business model of these apps are supposed to work. And when you throw a wrench in that, when you have government interference, you destroy the whole model. You destroy all the benefits that were created from these apps in the first place, right? And that's what you're saying happening in Seattle, because again, these people literally before this legislation was put into place, were getting paid $20 an hour, right? So if you probably did the app, if you got on the app at the right times where there's high demand, you probably made a decent amount of money. Again, considering how you are delivering food, okay? And I'm sorry, that doesn't require a lot of skills. This is coming from somebody who worked Uber. I was an Uber driver at one point in my life, and I also did DoorDash as well too for extra funds. But I never tried to rely on it as a full-time job. And see, what happens with a lot of these people is that when these apps first came out, you can make real good money. You can make better money on these apps than you could working, some minimum wage job or whatever. And people started to rely on these jobs as their main source of income. And it was never meant to be that. Okay. So now fast forward where you have all these people that are reliant on these apps, these gig jobs for a career when it's not a career. Okay. Being a delivery driver is not a career. I'm sorry. So you should not be getting paid career wages to do a side gig. Okay. It's a side gig. You should be thankful to get paid $20 an hour. Okay. You get paid $20 an hour to do a part-time job where you can sign up to do it anytime that you want. That's a blessing. I'm just keeping it 100. So what you have here are people who are shocked and surprised that, hey, companies are going to try to make up for the increased cost that is being pushed on them by the government by raising fees, because companies are never just going to eat a sudden increase in the cost of labor and not try to make up for it some other way. Again, companies try to maintain profitability. That is the point of the existence of these companies, is to make as much profit as they can. And I'm just saying that in exchange for that profit, you get the value in the service that is the delivery service in and of itself. And the pursuit of profit is why these apps exist, why this convenience exists, why these extra jobs exist. And I do think it's selfish when you come out here and you try to demand to get paid $26 an hour to do a job that, quite honestly, from a skill perspective, it's not worth that much money. It is what it is. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people be offended by it, but I'm just keeping it 100. Okay? And this is coming from somebody who did that job, right? I did that job at one point.
Sought a solution that will make the fee go away. There are national implications that will ensue based on what happens here.
Longtime drivers like Kimberly Wolf say they want a seat at the table as conversations continue before a future vote.
What in your mind would be a better solution?
Something that specifically addresses the junk fees that's happening with the customer.
And looking ahead, a city council committee will review and vote on any amendments on May 9th before this legislation moves to a full council for a vote on May 21st.
Yeah, so again, I find it hilarious how they're trying to walk this back. And when you look at the numbers, the devastating numbers associated with this increase in the minimum wage, you can kind of see why. Like, for example, you had people deleting their delivery apps from their phones because they was like, why even have the app, right? If it's going to cost as much for delivery. Uber Eats experienced a 30% decline in order volume in the city. DoorDash reported 30,000 fewer orders within just 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of this ordinance taking effect. For drivers, this decreased demand impacted their pocketbooks directly. For example, a driver who made $931 in a week during this time last year saw their earnings drop by half to $464.81. So their hourly wages went up. However, their take home dropped by more than half because they didn't have as many orders. Demand dropped so significantly that these drivers ended up making less money overall despite their hourly wages going up. Again, this is basic economics. Okay, this is something that somebody could have told you without passing this. But again, these people have to learn the hard way. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Why do you got to learn the hard way? Why do you got to learn the hard way? You already were consistently making $20 an hour, but you got greedy. You got greedy. You wanted more. Oh, we deserve 25. We deserve 30, $35 an hour. And you got exactly what you wanted. And now all of a sudden you ain't making money no more. Now you want to boo-hoo, whine, and cry about it and blame the company, right? And say, oh, well, it's their fault. It's their fault that we not get paid that much. No, it's your fault. It's your fault. You're asking for too much, right? You're demanding too much. You're a delivery driver. You're not supposed to make $40,000 a year, $50,000 a year to do that job. And again, I was a delivery driver at one point, part-time. Okay, I never thought about doing it full-time, but I understand. I get where you're coming from, okay? But hey, you know, it is what it is, man. The one thing I can say about 2024 is that the left, these progressives, they're learning the hard way, whether it be crime, whether it be the border, whether it be minimum wage, some of these progressive economic policies that have led to inflation. They're learning the hard way, man. Like, this is not what you want, right? This stuff doesn't work. It doesn't work. So, hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.